Welcome to the 5-Day Blues Guitar Challenge. This is just one lesson in a series where I'll teach you 5 different super fun blues progressions that will help you reboot your guitar practice. And if you want to learn the guitar practice method that has changed the lives of over 21,000 guitar players, you need to check out my online guitar reboot workshop to ensure you get the most out of your guitar practice. Just click the link here in the video or in the description. All right, let's get started. We're going to take a cue from Paul Simon today, and I say that purely based on the name of this 12-bar blues progression, KODACHROMATIC. Kodachrome was Paul Simon's song. It's much happier and less bluesy than this. I digress. The reason it's named the way that it is because it has a chromatic section in it. And I think a lot of times it's difficult to imagine where the chromatic section of a certain riff would come in because it sounds odd in isolation. However, I think this one you'll really vibe with because, well, it's downright fun to play and it has this really cool, well, we'll call it friendly dissonance. This is kind of based in part on a bass line and in part on an electric guitar riff that sounds really cool, palm muted. We're bringing it to the acoustic because, well, it's very applicable in this blues situation. So what I'm going to do is break down this riff, and you'll notice that there's really, I guess we'll call it 2 different physical executions of this riff. One of them is rooted on the low E string, the other is rooted on the A string. There's only a subtle difference between the two, so I'm going to start with the low E string, and then once we have the pieces, I'll kind of share with you how to put it all together. So the first chunk, the one rooted on the low E string, begins, ironically enough, on the low E string. Our index finger is going to fret the 5th fret on the low E. Now, in terms of picking, throughout this entire exercise, it is alternate picking, meaning a continuous kind of stream of down and up strokes. Because it's all written in 1/8 notes, it'll help you keep the time a little bit better, and it'll allow you to almost, your hand's going to act like a metronome, almost like a pendulum effect, which will ultimately help you keep time. Now, that being said, there's a couple of string jumps in this particular riff that may find you cursing because they found me cursing. That being the case, it's a great way to exercise your pick accuracy. So don't think of it as pure defeat if you miss the strings. It actually takes a while to get. Once you really get jiving on it, though, I think you'll find newfound confidence in your flat pick. Okay, back to the riff. So we've got our index finger on the 5th fret of the low E. We're going to do a downstroke there, and then jump up to the 7th fret of the D string, upstroke there, right? It's an octave. In fact, that's a great way to practice the initial part of this riff. Down on that low E, up on the D. From there, we're going to drop the index finger to the 5th fret of the G string, downstroke. Ring finger moves to the 7th fret of the A string, upstroke. Okay, so those 2 sections, those 2 pieces of this riff are the hardest part because we're skipping a string. So we go from the top, down on the low E, up on the D, down on the G, up on the A. And that, even if you just isolate that, that's a great exercise in and of itself for flat pick accuracy. So that would sound like this. Kind of a fun little thing in and of its own right. So that's the first half of this particular riff. The next part, so far we have this. The next part's all occurring on the D string, and it's the chromatic part of this particular riff. We're going to go to the 4th fret with our index finger, downstroke, up on the 5th fret of the D, up, down on the 6th, and then up on the 7th. Right, all on the D string, index, middle, ring, pinky, 1 finger per fret. So this entire riff is going to sound like this. Right? That's not too bad. In fact, that's over 50% of the entire 12-bar blues progression. And that's going to be over an A chord. Now let's look at the second physical execution of the riff. So we're going to drop this now to the A string. So this particular riff is rooted on the A string, and it starts out very similarly. We're going to go down on the 5th fret of the A, up on the 7th fret of the G. All right? Now, here's where things get subtly different. And I mean subtly different, meaning it's only a fret off of what you've already learned. Now we're going to take our middle finger to the 6th fret of the B, downstroke there. Ring finger is going to move up to the 7th fret of the D, upstroke there. And then we execute the chromatic on the G string. Again, starting at the 4th fret, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th. So this particular riff is just a subtle variation. Because we're going into B string territory, we have to adjust. So this riff, the second part of the riff, the part that's rooted on the A string, will sound like this. Again, just a subtle variation from what you've already learned, the part that's rooted on the low E string. Now, the good news is, once you have that part, all you have to do to complete the pieces of this puzzle is slide it up towards the body 2 frets. So you'll start it on the 7th fret of the A string and execute the same physical pattern. Index, ring, middle, ring, index, middle, ring, pinky. So you have these pieces. Now it's time to organize them. We'll call this part the A part. Play that 4 times. Then we'll move to the D part, which is this. Play that twice. Go back to the A part for 2. Move to this part, which is the E part. Play that once. Back to the D part. And then finalize it on the A part, playing that through 2 times. And you'll see that on the tablature. I just wanted you to look at it and say, okay, this looks like a lot of music, but ultimately, there's only 3 unique things, and they're pretty darn close to just one singular physical pattern. It's always good to see the patterns when you're trying to learn a song, a riff, a lick, what have you, because once you start to really build that pattern recognition muscle, they'll start to pop out at you, and things all of a sudden become a little bit easier because you're able to break them down much quicker. Take this one slow, have patience with the string skipping. I can assure you the more you work on it, the easier it will become. But it will take some time because you're dealing with traveling over a lot of real estate with your flat pick, which you might not be used to, and that's okay. This is a great way to start getting good at it. So best of luck to you.